Hi guys, in this video I want to walk you through the Agile Practice Guide, which is listed as one of the primary reference books for the PMP certification exam. You can think of this video as a quick summary of the content covered in the Agile Practice Guide. But before we move on to talk about the guide, I want to welcome you to the Career Sprints YouTube channel. My name is Rohit and we like to produce videos that help you with your professional development and continuous learning. If this is the first time you've landed on this channel, I'd like to welcome you and I hope you find the content to be useful. And to make sure that these videos reach directly to you, I would request you to hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon so that you are notified of whenever we release the next video. Alright, let's dive into the Agile Practice Guide publication. So the Agile Practice Guide was released by PMI along with the 6th edition of the PMBOK in September 2017, and it has been developed in collaboration with the Agile Alliance, which is a non-profit organization responsible for promoting Agile values, practices, and mindset globally. So according to PMI, the Agile Practice Guide provides tools, situational guidelines, and an understanding of the various Agile approaches available to enable better results. It is especially useful for those project managers accustomed to a more traditional environment to adapt to a more agile approach. And by traditional environment, they mean a more waterfall style approach. Evidently, we can see that more and more businesses are now harnessing the power of software, a trend that is visible in almost every single industry. As software becomes an integral part of our lives, a lot of companies are moving away from traditional waterfall project management techniques and adopting new ways of working, such as agile or hybrid techniques. Now, until 2020, PMI was largely focused on testing candidates on the predictive project life cycles, but in 2021, PMI changed the exam to include 50% agile questions to reflect the growing need for agile adoption across companies globally. In fact, most test takers these days are reporting that greater than 50% of the PMP exam is based on agile and hybrid questions. And hence, for the PMP exam, it is extremely important to know the content in the Agile Practice Guide. And there's no chance that you can skip reading the Agile Practice Guide. So it's very critical that you study this book thoroughly for the PMP certification exam. Some of you watching this video may already have experience with Scrum or other Agile techniques. And although that's great that you come with prior knowledge in Agile, it's still very critical that you go through the practice guide because it contains information about several other Agile frameworks, techniques, and practices that you might not be familiar with, such as XP, Kanban, Crystal, DSTM, and so on and so forth. And the thing with PMI exams is that it's always better to understand the PMI way of testing, and knowing the content in this book will help you understand that. I've tried to make it easy for anyone interested in understanding the Agile Practice Guide by creating a full-length course on Udemy. I've taken all the must-know sections and chapters from this book and have summarized them in this course so that you can learn the material in a visual video-based format. And this course has proven to be helpful for thousands of students who have registered for it. So if this is something that interests you, you can check out the course by clicking in the link that is provided in the description of this video. Now let's get a quick overview of what content is covered in the Agile Practice Guide. The primary sections to understand in the book are from chapters 2 through 6, the annexes, and also the glossary. However, the book also contains other sections such as the appendix, which is not really necessary to study for the PMP exam, so you can just skip them. Chapter 1 is the chapter on introduction, which gives you information on why the Agile Practice Guide was created, what is in and out of scope from this guide, and gives a brief summary of all the chapters that follow in the guide. In chapter 2, we get into the exam related parts of the exam. So this section starts with the differences between well-defined work and uncertain work and the characteristics that they exhibit. Next, in this chapter, they move on to talk about the famous Agile Manifesto and the 12 Agile Principles. Now, if you've never heard or seen the Agile Manifesto, read through them and reflect on them to understand how applying this thought process would improve the way you or your team would work on a day-to-day basis. Cementing an understanding of the Agile values and the principles is key because the rest of the book and everything else that you will learn about Agile in general is built on this mindset. They also go on to talk about what strategies can be applied to use these Agile values and practices in our daily lives. Next, they talk about the relationship between Lean, Agile, and the Kanban method, and why Lean is a superset of Agile and Kanban. And finally, they end this chapter with an uncertainty and complexity model, which is derived from the Stacy complexity model that categorizes tasks such as simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic. If you've enjoyed the video so far, I will urge you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Liking the video increases the reach of this video because the YouTube algorithm shows this video to other PMP aspirants such as yourself. And subscribing to this video will enable you to stay on top of all the new videos that we release from time to time. So chapter 3 is called Lifecycle Selection. In this chapter, they cover 4 types of project life cycles, which is predictive, agile, iterative, and incremental. And depending on the project needs and the type of the product being built, you might choose either one life cycle or a combination of them. For example, predictive life cycle approaches are better suited for projects where the requirements can be well defined, whereas agile approaches are better suited for projects with uncertain or emergent requirements. They also go on to use a table to explain the different characteristics exhibited by the different types of project life cycles. They also explain how agile and predictive approaches can be combined to make a hybrid life cycle. So for instance, projects can be predictive combined with agile, predominantly predictive with some agile components, and largely agile projects with predictive components. Next, under the agile umbrella section, you have various approaches such as XP, Scrum, Kanban, DSDM, Crystal, etc. And this section talks about mixing various approaches based on the project's context and needs. And finally, this chapter ends with a note on tailoring, since every project and company situation is unique and approaches need to be tailored to better fit the type of project being done. So the next 2 chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5, are on implementing agile. And implementing agile has 2 parts. So part 1 is implementing agile, creating an agile environment, which is covered in chapter 4. And the next chapter, chapter 5, is implementing agile, delivering in an agile environment. Now in chapter 4, implementing agile, creating an agile environment, a lot of topics revolve around agile roles, agile teams, and their needs. So this chapter starts with the agile mindset, talks about servant leadership and servant leader responsibilities. This section also talks about what specific actions servant leaders can take to lead teams and the organization while on the path to agility. Next, they also talk about how a project manager's role changes in an agile organization. Then this chapter talks about agile teams, their attributes, and the roles within the team. They also talk about the types of people in an organization, such as I-shaped people, T-shaped people, E-shaped people, and which type is more suited in an agile organization. From a team perspective, agile team structures and the need for dedicated team members are highlighted too in this chapter. Finally, this chapter ends with the types of workspaces that are suitable for an agile team, and they also talk about how teams and leaders can overcome organizational silos. Chapter number 5 is the second part of implementing agile, and it's called delivering in an agile environment. So this chapter is particularly important from learning all the technical and the execution elements related to agile. And this chapter can be quite heavy for some people. So remain focused while on this chapter, since some terms and concepts can get quite confusing. So for instance, this chapter covers all the agile events such as iteration planning, reviews, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, and backlog preparation and refinement. Then this chapter also goes on to talk about technical practices in agile such as continuous integration, pair programming, and several other technical practices. So learn these terms really well. Section 5.3 in this chapter is particularly interesting because it covers the various challenges agile teams face on projects and what could be the agile practices that could be used for troubleshooting these challenges. Then the next part of this chapter focuses on agile measurements and discusses all the agile artifacts and metrics that teams can use to promote transparency, inspection, and adaptation. And commonly used terms, graphs, charts such as the burn down chart, the burn up chart, the cumulative flow diagram, and a few other charts used by both Kanban and Scrum teams are also discussed in this section. So the 6th chapter is called Organizational Considerations for Project Agility. And primarily this chapter explores the organizational factors that impact the use of agile practices. So this could be, for instance, the culture of the organization, the readiness of the organization to take on agile practices and the agile mindset, the business practices in the organization, and the role that a project management office or a PMO plays in a company that is trying to become more agile. But let's look at each of the different sections in this chapter and see what's covered. Now, the first section talks about how Agile might change the organization and how to prepare the organization to deal with such types of changes. In the next section, we discover the types of organization cultures that are better suited for Agile. So we need to understand that not all cultures are a good fit for the Agile mindset and the practices, and some level of cultural change may need to be brought into the organization for Agile to really work. Next, this chapter also talks about how contracts might change or contracting might change in an Agile world and the types of contracting techniques that can be used. Next, we all understand that Scrum is an Agile technique that has worked really well for a single team of, say, 6 to 9 people. But what if your organization is large and you need the cross-functionality and the collaboration that you got in Scrum to cut across various organizational departments? What if your organization was building a large project with a multi-team effort? So to address such complex situations, Agile frameworks must be scaled to fit a multi-team or a multi-product environment. So this next section touches upon scaling frameworks such as SAFe, LESS, or the Nexus framework and considerations while scaling these Agile frameworks. The next section is on the Agile PMO, and it talks about how the PMO plays a role in enabling the organization to move to an Agile model, such as being value-driven, invitation-oriented, and multidisciplinary. Finally, this chapter ends with how individual elements of an organization structure can be improved using Agile practices. In this section, I want to talk about the 3 annexes at the end of the Agile Practice Guide. So we are going to talk about Annex A1, A2, and A3. Now, Annex A1 covers the PMBOK guide mapping and the application of Agile across the PMBOK knowledge areas. Here you will learn how Agile works in each of the 10 knowledge areas. In fact, I have a course on Udemy which covers how Agile is applied across the 10 knowledge areas in the PMBOK 6th edition, and it also talks about the difference between waterfall versus an Agile mindset. So this would be useful for anyone who is currently studying for the PMP certification exam and wants to get a clear-cut understanding in the differences between a predictive mindset and a Agile mindset. The next annex is A2, which is the Agile Manifesto mapping, and it shows in table format how each of the 4 Agile values and the 12 principles relate to practices described in the Agile Practice Guide. You can go through this section too. Next is Annex A3, which is a very important section, and this is something that should not be missed. This is because it provides a brief summary of several other Agile frameworks such as Scrum, Extreme Programming, Kanban, Crystal, Scrumban, Feature-Driven Development or FDD, Dynamic System Development Methods or DSDM, AUP or Agile Unified Process, and scaling frameworks such as SAFe, Scrum of Scrums, and Large-Scale Scrum, and even Disciplined Agile. So you will get a very good understanding of all these frameworks by going through this section. This pretty much wraps up all the important chapters that I wanted to talk to you about from the Agile Practice Guide that you must study for your PMP certification exam. Obviously, after reading the guide, you should solve lots of questions and check how well you've understood the material. To learn the Agile Practice Guide material in a more effective way, you can use my Udemy course, which will give you a deep understanding of all the concepts covered in the Agile Practice Guide. I have also embedded questions to test your understanding at the end of each chapter and at the end of the course as well. So go and check out the course using the link in the video description below. Thanks for watching this video till the end. Now I'm going to assume that if you watched this video till this point, you've enjoyed this video. And if you've enjoyed this video, I will urge you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. When you like this video, YouTube's algorithm picks it up and recommends this video to other people who may benefit from the information in this video. Plus, when you subscribe to the channel, you will get notified of all the latest videos that we release from time to time. Lastly, I want to wish you good luck with your PMP exam preparation.